it seems like there's a little bit of a robot trend in Boston right now.
Yeah.
There's iRobot that makes the Roomba and some other things, right? And
military robots.
Okay, they're military, and then and they're really successful financially, I believe. Is that right?
They're doing quite well. Yeah.
And then there's Harvest Automation, which actually the firm I'm involved with invested in, Founder Collective, and they do. I mean, you could probably describe it better than me, but they do robots for the agricultural industry.
That's right.
And then there's like Heartland Robotics.
Heartland, yeah.
Can you talk a little about those companies maybe, and just is there? I think it's sort of interesting because there's so much talk, kind of in the TechCrunch world, things about consumer internet and things like this, and to me it's sort of an interesting counter trend, if you I don't know.
An interesting other, yeah. I mean, there is absolutely a robotics tech cluster that has formed up in Boston. Mm-hmm. And it has to do, we went there for the same reasons that I think a lot of these companies are forming up there. One is you have access to an amazing range of technical talent from, we have everybody from, firmware guys that are programming the robots, to the electrical engineers that are designing the boards, to the software engineers who are writing this enterprise class software. Mm-hmm. And algorithm, PhD algorithm guys that are coming up with better ways to store, move, and sort. So you get a whole range of technical talent in the Boston market. When I was
this is because of the great MIT, et cetera, all the great universities.
Yeah, it's just a home for that kind of stuff. And MIT, a lot of it comes out of MIT. But when I started the business, we were literally located in Palo Alto. I was living in California after Webvan, and there are hardware people in the Bay Area, but they're kind of your Palm Pilot kind of guys. They're not gearbox and motor and metal kind of CAD guys. They're there, but you find a lot more of that in Boston. The second thing was that you needed to be able to build the robots, and so in and around New England, you have a vendor base of machine shops that can do sheet metal and precision machining of ball screws, for example, that we use, or stamping of parts. There's electronic printed circuit board houses. So we end up drawing about 50% of the content of the robot from New England-based vendors, which makes it quick turn, easy to prototype, really drawing a vendor base. So that helped, and we build the robots in-house, where our volumes are such that it makes a ton of sense just to build them here and ship them all over the world. And build it at Kiva means final assembly. We don't make the robot from scratch. We do the final assembly in-house. The parts come in from all over. Yeah. But so that's another reason to be in and around Boston. And I think that's some of the reasons you see these other robotics companies forming up. The Harvest.
Well, often also what happens is, like, once you get enough, I mean, we see this in other tech clusters, right? Like, hopefully what will happen is there'll be enough critical mass of robot companies that you'll see people like spin out, some top engineer leaves another company, and hopefully not yours, and then goes and starts one, but I mean, like, you start seeing an ecosystem,
Well, I think iRobot's been there obviously the longest, maybe, I want to say maybe even 15 years, and a lot of companies have come out. I think Charles at Harvest is an example of a spin out from, not that he took technology with, but that grew up in the robotics industry, started his own. And what they've done is really interesting, is they've come up with a mobile robotic application that actually spreads potted plants out in a nursery setting, where in Kiva, we put our mobile robots inside of a warehouse to move shelving around in a very controlled, structured environment. He's solving a different labor problem, which is all the labor that goes into just spreading pots out as the bushes turn into trees and start to grow. And it's a tough application, and they've invented a very simple way for the robots to spread those, pick them up, move them, and spread them around.
As I understand, those robots are less about the sort of enterprise software, and they're more about like communicating with one another.
Yeah,
and this kind of, I don't know.
They're much more autonomous than you might ascribe to Kiva bots. Ours look, when you look at the videos, hundreds of mobile robots swarming around, they're all having a conversation with a central service directing the traffic, if you will. And we had to write, so a lot of Kiva is the software group, and we had to write a lot of software to run that whole building. In the case of Harvest, they have a very autonomous robot. You turn it on, and it just does its thing. And then when it's done, you turn it back off.
Potentially, these systems could make manufacturing in the U.S. cost competitive again.
Yeah, that's their thesis, and I obviously fully support it. I mean, the point is, I how do you bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S.? Well, our labor rates are higher. Let's not pull punches there. So what we're going to have to do is find ways to make the U.S. labor force more productive. Continue to make it more productive.
But it will. It's funny, right? Because you will need fewer people. I mean, as part of the efficiency gains. But they'll have a different skill set. So a lot of it probably requires like retraining and things, right? No, or maybe not.
Potentially better skills, but the alternative is poof, those jobs go to China. Yeah. And so at least you keep the jobs here in the U.S. There might not be 100, there might be 80 people doing it now because you found a way to make them 20% more efficient, but at least they didn't go overseas.
Yeah.